It's hard at times, because you're waiting to be put to death. So that kind of breaks a little part of you every day. Kind of breaks you every day. And sometimes I have to catch myself, for being overwhelmed and stressed out, and like force myself to eat because it does that to you where you just don't want to do nothing. As her being a witness of my execution, it's up to her, but I really don't want her to see that, me getting pumped full of drugs and being overdosed with drugs to kill me, to make my heart stop. I think that would leave a bad impression, that will override the good memories we had over the years. She'll always close her eyes and see that.
Have you ever thought how a man feel knowing he'll never again see the outside world? For most people, that thought alone would crush them to death already. But Steven Nelson didn't seem to care at all. He wasn't the kind of inmate who really stayed quiet, or even kept his head down, or tried to do his time. Even behind bars, he was a very dangerous person. Nelson was already locked up for murdering a pastor in Arlington, Texas. But he went ahead and killed another inmate inside jail. Witnesses recalled Nelson laughing afterward, then pretended to play air guitar over the man's dead body. In this video, we'll take you through Steven Nelson's final 24 hours and the brutal path that led him to the death chamber. Welcome to the True Crime Teller, where we dive into real crime cases, uncover the facts, and explore the truth behind every story, and share with you their last moments before execution. Kindly hit that like button and subscribe to support the community. It all started on March 3rd, 2011 at North Point Baptist Church in Arlington, Texas. That faithful Thursday morning was quiet. Inside the church was a 28-year-old pastor. Clint Dobson sat at his desk. He was a soft-spoken person, thoughtful, and the kind of man who remembered your name and really meant it when he asked how you were doing. Across the room, 69-year-old church secretary Judy Elliott typed away at her desk. She was punctual, faithful, kind, and known for never missing a day of work. Neither of them knew what was about to happen. That morning, 24-year-old Steven Nelson walked through the church doors, but then he wasn't there to pray. He was there to rob. What happened next was brutal and fast. Nelson attacked Pastor Clint first. Investigators believe Nelson hit him in the head with a computer stand. Clint fought back trying to survive, but Nelson overpowered him. He wrapped a computer cord around Clint's neck, strangled him, and then smothered him with a plastic bag until he stopped breathing. Nelson attacked Judy next. Nelson beat her so badly she had bleeding in her brain, broken bones across her face, arms, legs, and back. Her injuries were so severe it was hard to tell where one wound ended and the next began. She quickly passed out before the beating was even over. When he was done, Nelson stole Clint's laptop, their cell phones, Judy's credit cards, and her car. He stepped over their bodies and drove away like nothing had happened. But it wasn't just another Thursday. Clint was dead, Judy was barely alive, and the church would never be the same again. By lunchtime, people started getting worried. Clint had planned to meet a church member that afternoon, Dale Harwell, but never showed up. Dale Harwell called, but Clint never unanswered. By 12:40 p.m., another member, Deborah Jenkins, arrived at the church. Clint's car was still parked outside, but the building was unusually quiet. She rang the doorbell and called the office. No answer. Uneasy, she drove off, only to return 15 minutes later. This time, Clint's car was gone. Meanwhile, Clint's wife, Laura, was also panicking. Her calls went straight to voicemail. She reached out to Jake Turner, the church's part-time music minister. Jake then called Judy's husband, John. Without hesitation, John rushed to the church. When he entered, the office looked ransacked. Papers everywhere, furniture flipped, drawers pulled out. Then he saw a woman on the ground covered in blood. At first, he didn't recognize her. Only when he noticed her clothes did he realize it was his wife, Judy. Police officer Jesse Parrish soon arrived. Inside, he found Clint lying face up behind his desk. His hands were tied and a plastic bag was over his head. Jesse pulled it off, but it was already too late. Clint was already dead. Amazingly, Judy was still alive. Paramedics rushed her to the hospital. Doctors didn't think she'd make it, but she fought through. After 2 weeks in the hospital and 5 months of therapy, Judy finally returned home, her body held together with screws and plates. Her memory of the attack stayed sharp, and she remembered who had done it. By then, Steven Nelson was on the move. He sold Clint's laptop out of Judy's stolen car, used her credit cards at gas stations and malls, and even bragged to friends about robbing a pastor. Eventually, police caught him driving Judy's car, still in possession of the stolen items. Blood on his shoes matched both victims. During investigation, Nelson denied hurting anyone. At first, he admitted being at the church, but solidly claimed he didn't do the killing. He told police he was just the lookout during a robbery, that others were involved, and that he didn't even know the building they robbed was a church. Nelson claimed 2 of his friends went inside first. According to his story, by the time he went in, Clint and Judy were already injured. He claimed all he did was to grab the laptop and car keys, then left. He told investigators he had nothing to do with tying anyone up or putting a bag over Clint's head. But his version didn't add up. Police built their case piece by piece, and the evidence kept pointing straight at Nelson. His fingerprints were found inside the church, and part of his belt, ripped during the violent struggle, was left behind at the scene. Blood on his shoes later tested positive for both victims. Surveillance cameras caught him using Judy's stolen credit cards at gas stations and shopping malls within hours of the attack. And to top it off, his own friends testified against him that Nelson bragged about robbing a pastor and even laughed about it that faithful day. The mountain of evidence completely crushed the story he tried to tell investigators. When Nelson took the stand at his trial in 2012, he doubled down. He told the jury he didn't kill anyone. He said he thought it was just a regular robbery and claimed he didn't realize it was a church until he recognized Pastor Clint Dobson. He painted himself as someone who gotten over his head that he was only there to take a laptop, a car, and nothing more. But jurors weren't buying it. Judy Elliott, the church secretary who survived the attack, pointed directly at him as the man who tied them up and beat them. She remembered everything clearly. Nelson, even in prison, was so notorious that on March 19, 2012, he killed Jonathan Holden. Holden was a 31-year-old inmate at the Tyrone County Jail known to struggle with mental health issues. Witnesses said Steven Nelson convinced Holden to fake a hanging so he would be transferred out of the unit. Instead, Nelson wrapped a torn jail blanket around Holden's neck, braced his feet against the bars, and pulled until Holden stopped breathing. Some inmates later said Holden had irritated others by muttering a racial slur shortly before the attack. What shocked everyone wasn't just the killing itself, it was what came after. Witnesses testified that Nelson laughed, broke into a little celebration dance, and even pretended to play air guitar with a broom over Holden's body. In court, Nelson never accepted responsibility. His defense suggested Holden might have taken his own life, but the jury heard detailed eyewitness accounts describing Nelson setting up the fake hanging and then strangling him to death. On October 8, 2012, the jury found him guilty of capital murder and attempted capital murder. Just 8 days later, they sentenced him to death. Right after hearing his fate, Nelson ripped apart a sprinkler system in the courtroom, flooding the place with black water. It was his last outburst before being shipped off to death row. To understand how Nelson ended up here, you have to look at his early life. Nelson was born in Ada, Oklahoma in 1987. He grew up in a violent and unstable home. His father was abusive, and his mother would sometimes disappear for days or weeks sometimes, leaving the kids to fend for themselves. From a young age, Nelson acted out. At age 3, he tried to set his mother's mattress on fire. When he was 6 years, he was already known for stealing. By his early teens, he was breaking into homes and stealing jewelries, cars, and other personal belongings. Judges sent him to juvenile lockups, but he never straightened out. By 2011, Nelson was already on probation for assaulting his girlfriend. That's when he walked into North Point Baptist Church and committed the crime that sealed his fate. Nelson spent the next 12 years on death row at the Huntsville Unit in Texas. He filed several appeals at every level, state, federal, even the U.S. Supreme Court, but all of them failed. Nelson married a French woman named Helen Noah Dubois while he was in prison. He met Helen through a pen pal service in 2020, starting as friends and growing closer over shared life experiences. They married in 2023 through prison glass. There was no physical contact, but deeply meaningful. While Helen remained a steadfast presence, she organized support rallies and serving as a source of comfort and peace, and seeking Nelson's release. But Nelson was only worried about how the execution would affect her, but ultimately honored her decision to be present or not. On February 5th, 2025, Nelson's time ran out. Texas does not allow inmates to choose a special last meal, so he ate the same food as everyone else that day. As he was strapped to the gurney inside the Huntsville Unit, his final words weren't for the victims' families. They were just for his wife. He told her he loved her so much and will miss her, that he wasn't afraid to die, and that he was ready to go home. He even asked her to hug his dog for him. The warden gave the signal, and the lethal injection began. Nelson turned toward his wife behind the glass, whispered, "Let me go to sleep." And after a few gasps, his body went still. He was pronounced dead at exactly 6:50 p.m., just 13 days before his 38th birthday. Judy Elliott, who survived the brutal church attack, but sadly passed away in 2024, a year before Steven Nelson's execution. When the day finally came in February 2025, it was her son, Bradley Elliott, who attended on behalf of his late mother. After witnessing the execution, Bradley gave a statement of grace and forgiveness, saying, "I hope that today, as Mr. Nelson took his last breath, he was greeted by the same loving and gracious Savior that has stood by us through everything. Mr. Nelson, we forgive you, and we hope to see you when we are called home." But here's what stood out. Nelson's final words had nothing to do with the people he killed or their family members. He didn't ask for forgiveness, nor did he mention his victims. Instead, his focus was on the woman he married while on death row. What do you think about the execution that just took place? Do you believe it was just or not? Let me know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to keep up with the next executions.